Welcome to the third season of The Morning Glory Project, Stories of Determination. I'm your host, Betsy Graziani-Fossbender, and together with my co-producer, Angela Washington, we bring you really amazing stories of amazing people. I'm so lucky that I get to have these conversations and to share them with you. These are conversations with people who have overcome, people who have endured, people who have gone on when others might not have. They've overcome losses or tragedies, disappointments and heartbreaks, or they've seen a goal and pursued it to its end. And what I'm really fascinated by is they don't just share that they had these stories or that they lived them, but how. What were their inspirations? What were the resources they used? What ideas kept them going? How did they dig deep and find what they needed to find to go on? Because it's my belief that when we learn how someone else got through hard times or found their goals, that we learn how we might be able to do the same. Thank you so much for listening to the Morning Glory Project. And if you like what you hear, give us a like or a share on your social media site, or golly, use the good old-fashioned word of mouth and tell a friend about us. We love sharing these stories with other people. Thanks for listening. I'm ever so happy to be welcoming Stephen Dexter to the Morning Glory Project. Stephen is an actor, writer, audiobook narrator, and an activist based in New York City whose work can be seen on both stage and screen. He's appeared on Off-Broadway and International stages and is a lifetime member of the legendary Actors Studio. He's worked steadily in film and TV, most recently appearing in Evil on Paramount Plus, Dr. Death on NBC Peacock, and Billions on Showtime. He's also an award-winning audiobook narrator with over 200 titles to his credit, and his most recent film, American Morning, which he wrote, produced, and stars in alongside Emmy-winner Richard Schiff, who is familiar to us from The West Wing and recently The Good Doctor. This deals with the aftermath of a school shooting and the desperate measures a survivor resorts to reconcile his guilt and to effect change. The film is currently on the festival circuit and has been lauded both here and abroad, receiving a Spirit of Cinema nomination and special mention for Best Short Film at the venerable Oldenburg Film Festival in Germany. Stephen Dexter, thank you so much for being part of the Morning Glory Project. Welcome.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Betsy.
So, Stephen, you're clearly a successful actor in lots of arenas. What is it that brought you to this particular project of writing and producing a short film of this nature at this time?
I think it came from just having been deeply affected and broken in a lot of ways following the events of Sandy Hook, because I grew up in Connecticut and only about 30 minutes from Newtown, and seeing those first images before I even, as the details, the horrific details were being revealed and announced, it was the pictures that really struck me of the kids being led through the parking lot, and
6-year-olds.
Yeah, the little kids by the FBI agents and law enforcement, and how that easily could have been the elementary school that my sister and I went to. You know, Newtown is a very, very similar town to where I grew up in Naugatuck. So it was something like that that really broke me and really, really got me active as I followed that story and was dealing with the emotion and how deeply it affected me, and just how things did not change, how there was no drastic, there was a lot of, fanfare and outrage, rightly so. And it really did seem, even though there had been a lot of school shootings up to that point that were terrible, there was something about this one that was just very specific. And it just really seemed like, this has got to be, could we possibly imagine anything worse than this? And things still did not change. And the obstacles that stood in the way and the rationalizations at the root of those obstacles were just so ridiculous to me, and so it really, really got me involved, and it became a top priority for me to work for common sense gun legislation as much as I could. So that got me involved in a lot of the amazing organizations that sadly were necessary because of this tragedy and other tragedies that had come before and have subsequently come afterwards. And so I got involved in them, living in New York City, and when they would have rallies and
so you kind of joined the activism of sensible gun legislation and sensible gun. I think of it even beyond legislation, Stephen. I think of it as America needs a sensible relationship with guns, and in addition to legislation that helps that be the case. But like you and like so many people that I care about and activists I know, Sandy Hook was just that time, because we all said, this is horrifying, more horrifying than even every other one before, as horrifying as they all have been. But of course, this will be enough. Yeah. This will change things. And it's 10 years. It's 10 years since Sandy Hook. And our mutual friends, Sandy and Lonnie Phillips, who founded Survivors Empowered, informed me that it has been 27 years since there's been any federal gun legislation of any kind. Even so, through Littleton, Colorado, and Aurora, and the churches that have been shot, all of it, it just doesn't seem to change. So it sounds like you were in the same soup as a lot of us were in, which is like, of course this will do it, and then, oh my gosh, if this won't do it, what the hell will?
Yeah. I think that, and then as the ones that happen afterwards, that happen at schools. I mean, Parkland, I have family in Parkland. And so when that one happened, but again, that was another one that was like, wow, these kids, the March for Our Lives movement, David Hogg and X Gonzalez and their whole, like, I thought, wow, this is, I have not seen this since Sandy Hook. I've not seen this kind of like rage coming out of the grief and enough is enough and not one more and all these different hashtags and things like that. So I was really optimistic and I think that they did do a lot of good, but for me I wanted to go beyond. You start to like take an inventory and say, okay, I can donate, I can march, I can rally, I can get behind these people, I can sign the petitions and vote, be a gun sense voter. But what more can I do? And because I have training in writing and a love for storytelling and skills in acting, then why don't I try to channel that? And it could almost be a cathartic kind of thing, because I was holding on to a lot of harboring a lot of stuff that when you're not seeing, and this is just from me who has not been directly affected yet to gun violence and mass shooting, but still having empathy for my fellow human beings and saying, how can I maybe help myself to start to let go of some of this stuff?
Well, so it sounded like you were saying, I'm doing the stuff I know how to do, voting and marching maybe, and those kinds of things. But it sounds like what you were saying is, wait a minute, and I'll use this metaphor aptly. It was time for bigger guns in your fight. It sounded like you needed to employ your art, and that's what I often hear people say. Well, I don't. What am I going to do? I'll send $10 or I'll do this or that. But I often say, you may have skills that the passions that you believe in can use. And for you, it was the skill of writing, storytelling, and film, specifically to bring more attention to this topic. So can you tell me a bit about this film, and then I want to ask what you hope for from it. So the film itself, and I've been privileged enough to be able to preview it. It's about 35 minutes long, something like that?
25.
25. Okay,
minutes.
So it's 25 minutes long. it's not an easy film to watch for anybody, nor is it meant to be. Mm-mm. But tell me about how it came about. Tell me about the film itself and the actors in it, and then we'll talk about what you hope for with it.
I mean, really, the way that I describe it to most people is that it was a purging, and it was a form of like bloodletting. I needed to get something out, and like a lot of writing projects where, it's the hardest step is just to sit down and start writing and not prejudging and saying this is gonna suck, this is gonna, I don't know what I'm doing, and because you get in your own way and all these. You've never written. You wrote like student films when you were in
Who
undergrad.
Do you think
and things
you
like
are?
That. Exactly. Like this isn't your story to tell and things like. But knowing that like okay, this is going to be fiction. I'm going to take the feelings that I have and just try to put it out there. And you get that first draft. And of course, every single first draft of any play, any screenplay, any novel has been terrible. And you go back and then you revise and you get people's opinion, and it does take a little while. And so the first draft that came out of American Morning was only 9 pages, and it really was just a conversation between father and son. The core was always that has remained throughout the different iterations and the different revisions and drafts and everything, was that Connor, the protagonist, was someone who had survived a shooting and was so fed up with the fact that nothing had changed that he said, I'm going to take this into my own hands and kind of become a vigilante, because it always just seemed like this was always from a distance from the people that, to me, were the ones that were standing in the way, the ones that were always saying, no, the Second Amendment, freedom, right to bear arms, rights, freedom, that sort of thing. So it started there, but then it was a very, very angry, really, really graphic when I started to expand it into something that like, okay, if I want to make this more and have the utmost impact, I need to kind of make this more than just this conversation between a father and son. I need to give some backstory.
And the father in this case, in this case, played by the brilliant actor Richard Schiff, whose work I've admired for a long time. Of course, yours I'm just coming to know. Mm-hmm. It's the discussion between the two of them about, after Connor has survived, and to be clear, Connor in this case, whom you play, is as a teacher of first or second graders.
Mm-hmm. And they're like fourth graders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So a teacher of young kids and caught in a school shooting. And I'll say that as difficult as the film is to watch, I was so pleased that there was not gratuitous violence. There wasn't. The violence actually takes place off screen, which as Alfred Hitchcock knew it is almost scarier because it takes place in your mind. But I was pleased that it didn't have that. It was violent enough without having to see that and without having to re-injure people who are survivors. So you're a teacher of young kids. You survived this school shooting that's horrible. And tell me about the relationship between your character and Richard Schiff's character, the father-son. What's his function in the story?
I think he really functions as that grounded. I guess I don't know. The first word that came to mind was like my conscience, which a lot of times the father-son relationship is endlessly complicated. Not in necessarily a bad way, but just for me, it's always something that. It's just very, very interesting to me. There's a feature-length screenplay that I'm working on right now that kind of deals with the same type of dynamic, completely different. It's not school shootings or gun violence or anything like that, but it deals with that because it's such a fascinating relationship. And so I think, Connor being in his 30s and off teaching, he has this career as an elementary school music teacher, and he's working in this this small town called Beaconville in the film, and then this horrific event happens, which is kind of it's terrible enough as it is, but the fact that, like you see in the film, the choice that he has to make.
The choice is kind of he has to make, sort of, dare I say, sort of a Sophie's choice about protecting a child or protecting the group of children.
Yeah. And that aspect came out of just conversations that I've had with teacher friends of mine, which was invaluable when I was, when I wanted to do this as much justice as I could. All the books that I read and the interviews that I listened to and the documentaries that I watched, and then reaching out to friends and friends of friends who were teachers. I tried to get, like the younger the kids, the better. But I asked questions as to everybody who was willing to answer. And again, thinking, I can't ask that. I can't, when I came up with my list of like 10 questions, thinking, even though they're friends of mine like that, they're not going to want to answer that.
So what was the question you were afraid that you couldn't ask?
Just about how they feel about the protocols and how they feel about active shooter drills and what they as public school teachers, and in a couple of cases, private school teachers are, what's demanded of them.
It's outrageous, really, when we think about it, when we think how not only how little we pay in terms of monetary value, but how little teachers are valued. And then on top of it, to ask them to be in a war zone, really.
Yeah, to be soldiers in addition. So that's it was interesting to get the different perspectives on what these schools require. Is it a fight back sort of mentality, the ALICE acronym, or is it, do we just, we block out the window, we go to the quiet place away from that and we just wait? And so I tried to kind of combine those things. So I had a good friend of mine from childhood who said that he has a huge pair of like heavy metal scissors that he has in his desk that he could potentially use as a weapon. I have another friend who has she does like stagecraft for theater, and so she has a prop of like a spear or something, like a it's not an actual, but it still could be used as a weapon that she has in the room, that she's like, I could use this if somebody gets through. So that's why, Connor, it's a quick thing, but I was like, that's so, it's so sad, but I want to use that. And that's why he grabs like a big pair of scissors, and I want it to be as accurate as possible when it comes to that protocol and the fact that these kids,
to the real experience of the teachers,
exactly, and to keep it in that, and to keep it in the room, not show the shooter. I wasn't interested in seeing what the person looked like. I wasn't interested in what could we have done differently to help little Bobby so he didn't go and do this. I'm like, no, this is all from that's been done. Whenever I was looking at like films that have been done about this issue, it always seemed to take that perspective.
Well, that's the other thing that I really admired about the film, Stephen, is it didn't glorify the person using the gun. Not that we don't need to pay attention to how we break people in this culture and how somebody can come to that point, but that's not what the point of this story is. This story is about empathy for the role that this teacher is in. And the other element of the story that I thought was interesting was that, how do I say it? That you didn't also develop all the characters in lots and lots of ways. I mean, they were just, you got to know the characters, the children, really quickly. And here's this idyllic, here's a male teacher, which is in the lower grades more of an anomaly than a norm. And so here's a male teacher, a music teacher, somebody who is loving and tender with these kids, which is a beautiful thing to see. And at the same time, you didn't, he's clearly a sensitive, sweet, lovely guy, but he also is a conservative guy. Correct? Can you say a little bit about why you made that particular choice?
Yeah, because I mean, the other thing is that I didn't want to make it seem like it could easily be written off as a PSA and as something that, is just preaching to the choir. The biggest part of this film was that we could somehow find common ground is the ultimate objective, is to say this is someone who, was not already a staunch, liberal, but was someone who was a member of this organization, the American Gun Coalition, this gun group, and who is a devout Catholic, or was a devout Catholic and Republican, and so to say like, but this happened to me, and this I cannot, my eyes have been opened to this sort of thing, and why and how this is, I don't understand, wait until this kind of thing happens to you. And so we wanted to really just address, that's why in the scene where, Connor is basically saying his last goodbyes, his motives for that he's going to post on YouTube. These are the things that I exploited. These are the loopholes that still exist that would allow me to do something like this and go after someone who it just never seems like it affects this person or these type of people directly. So maybe that's the answer. Because what we kind of came up with as a team is, when we were talking about, like the films going out to these film festivals, and we're going to be doing Q&As and things like that, is that the crux of the film is what will it take? And I think that was really great when that kind of axiom came up, is because that's what it was like for me with when Newtown happened. It's just like, are you serious?
Right.
Like, no way that this would happen. And then, okay, the kids, and then we broke records with Las Vegas with 60 people killed. And the fact that he was able to bring all that artillery up to his room over so many times and kill so many people and injure so many people and traumatize so many people. And it was bump stocks. Let's do away with bump stocks that he was able to modify.
And that was the focus.
Yeah, to make it. And okay. And it was like, that's the placating. That's the, okay, shoot, 60 people. That's the most ever. It's not just going to be thoughts and prayers. What else can we give them? Okay, bump stocks. There you go. Now be quiet.
Well, what's really clear to me about this film, there are a couple of things that really pop out. One is that it's not an anti-gun movie. It's an anti-gun violence movie. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference. There's a difference between people who have guns for sport and are responsible with them. It might not be my bag. I might never be interested in doing that, but I respect the right of others to do that responsibly and ethically and environmentally consciously. But this is not an anti-gun film. It's an anti-gun violence film. And it asks the question that you say so well, which is, what will it take? What will it take? So, Stephen, I want to focus back just for a second on, you had to have overcome quite a lot of obstacles of various kinds. I imagine your own emotional obstacles, but also financial ones. And to get a film made, to get an actor like Richard Schiff involved, to get people to contribute money, what kept you going to do that? Because I can only imagine how hard that is. It's hard. I'm an author. It's hard to just get a book published, much less a film made. Yeah,
it's believing in your intentions. It's believing in this cause, and it's also, it's relying on sometimes when you feel like you don't have that on a support system that can maybe carry you. When you're saying, no, what the hell are we doing? This is going to be so bad. And even my history of self-doubt and anxiety and things like that, you fall into those traps of, like, even when the good things happen, you're like, oh my God, well,
then when's the bad thing?
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like you make these excuses of, like, well, we can't make the movie because we don't have the money. But if we had the money, oh my God, yeah, now we have the money. Oh, but it's not good enough. I got to revise the script. Once I revise the script, it's good. And then we get a director. Well, it's instead of, a lot of times I would fall into the trap of, instead of looking at the positives of, oh my God, we have, an established director who not only jumped at the chance to direct this film when there's so many other films that he could have directed. I mean, Robbie Bryan is someone who's directed like feature films with big names, and he was coming back to direct a short because he believed in this cause and he believed in the story and the script. So, but I was just feeling the pressure of that. And then when he said, I think I could get Richard Schiff to play Dale Mathis, to play Connor's dad, and then it's just, oh my God, the pressure of it's just not going to be good enough. And then, but having the kind of love and support network in my life to say, Stephen, this is not something to be scared of. This is something to celebrate, that it is that good, and the story is, and the intentions are that noble. And this does have the chance to change things. These people are not just doing this. These people are not just saying this. And even when we had all but locked Richard Schiff in and gotten Robbie, and then had to, and were fortunate enough to have enough money to go into production, we needed to then go back to crowdfunding and appeal to the generosity of others for post-production. And this was during a pandemic. So that was one of the big things of like, how can we ask people to give money to this film when there's people that are, beating each other up for toilet paper? It was just so, we were so like, like, oh, when is the right time to do it? But we have to do it now. So let's just, take a chance. And then when we set the our goal, I was like, ay. But then it just became, let's just see what happens. Let's put as much as we can into our, little pitch video, and just really be honest with people, not try to sell them on, please give us, so much money because we want to be rich and famous, but just, we worked really, really hard, and these, kids worked really, really hard, and we believe in this film and what it can, and the dialogue that it can start, the conversations that people can really have, because we do really feel like this is something different. And it can, if people can just say, listen, and I've talked about this when I've been fortunate enough to attend the film festivals and talk with the audience afterwards, is that these particular laws that Connor calls out are the ones that he exploit, that enable him to potentially, execute his ultimate plan, are anybody could do. And so it's more of like it's you said like it's a anti-gun violence, but it's also an anti-ease of acquisition film, because that's the thing that just blows my mind, is that, like you said, I'm not anti-gun, I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I have family that own firearms. My parents up in the woods of Vermont have a shotgun because there's bears and coyotes, and they're out in their backyard at night, and they have a little dog. And I totally understand for home defense and for hunting, and going to the gun range and shooting off.
Yeah, that's not the issue.
Exactly. It's just the fact that something so powerful like assault rifles, and the ammo capacity and the strength of the ammo and the ease, online, it's crazy. That's just insane to me. That just defies. I'm like, that's something that I feel like there should be no debate about whether the founding fathers or whatever would be on board with that sort of thing.
Yeah, given that they had muskets.
Exactly.
So it's interesting as I hear you talk about this, Stephen, and I'm connecting it to our conversation that we had before this recorded one, and that is, I hear you toggling back and forth between this sure sounding, I believe in this has to happen, this is important, and this doubting self and this self-recrimination. And I think that's the plague of lots of artists and creative people in general, that the doubt nibbles at our heels and yaps at us when we're trying to do something brave. And still, it sounds like the through thread for you is continuing to come back to believing in this project, having gone through each of the gauntlets of both the creative process and the mechanics of the funding and of making a film and all of those things, that you come out the other side of it. And the thread through both of those parallel stories, or the seesaw between them, is empathy. It sounds to me like you empathized with, when you saw what happened at Newtown, when you saw what happened at Parkland, when you saw the kids involved, it stirred in you this empathy, and that's what you want for this film. You want there to be an empathic connection between people who have not necessarily been touched by gun violence personally yet, as you say. That seems to be the goal, is to use storytelling to build empathy, to cause change.
Yeah. I think that it's such an effect. I mean, I think of, because this is what I've dedicated my life to, is that it's had such an impact on me, film and theater, and shaping my personality and my worldview and the way that I look at the world, and then going through drama school and working with amazing directors that it just really brings you to a place of understanding and non-judgment. There was a saying that one of my favorite acting teachers at school had called, it was practicing awareness without judgment. And it was just looking at something and trying to be as objective as possible. And this was in terms of, obviously, you may have to play some despicable characters, but you have to see things from their point of view, or you have to understand, if, again, you don't want to go into the place of like, well, I've never lost anyone directly through gun violence, again, yet. It just seems like a matter of time, but for all of us, but I can tap into that sense of loss, and because that's the nature of powerful storytelling, is making sure that the stakes are there, and it's life or death, and so that's why you have to approach this with the utmost empathy and sensitivity to the fact that this, especially something like this, continues to happen in this country, and has happened so many times. So again, going at it from a purely fictional, this is my story. This started with, again, just an idea a terrible idea that I had was Connor's. Terrible in the sense of like, oh my God, I can't believe I just thought that. Like, will it take, those people dying in front of those people for them to say, oh my God, I'd never understood when all these kids died, and all these concert goers and church goers and movie theater goers, it just didn't sink in, but now it happened right in front of me. And how did they do that? Oh, by exploiting these laws that I'm making sure that I keep these lax laws on the books. That's what it would take. And I was like, wow, there's something really powerful there. So let me maybe expound on that. And that was kind of how American Mourning was born. And then, again, reaching out to, being fortunate enough to talk to Sandy and Lonnie and to get to know them, and that this is something that there is this kind of anger, there is this kind of rage that exists. And I remember getting it from my teacher friends as well, where it was just like, this is so, ridiculous that we have to, that this is now that active shooter drills are just as common as fire drills were, in the 90s.
Well, so that's one last thing I wanted to kind of touch back on that you and I talked about prior to this conversation. And that is that you're about the age of my older son, and which makes me feel really old right now, but that's okay.
You're not.
And I'm aware that my two children, my sons, grew up with school shootings as a reality, because Columbine happened when my kids were small, when my older kid was small, and then Sandy Hook when my younger kid was coming through. And I think of you as the gun violence generation, which really pisses me off. I don't want to use a phrase like that. And I really wonder, even for those who came in perhaps without psychological vulnerability, maybe they didn't have anxiety disorders or obsessive compulsive kinds of things. I just wonder how much more predominant anxiety is for generations that grew up like this, because of how terrifying it is all the time.
I mean, I can't imagine if I were, the age of your younger child, if I were like young, if I were, God forbid, the age of the kids in Sandy Hook when Sandy Hook happened, or in elementary school or even in middle school, because I was a little bit older when Columbine happened, but we did still have several active shooter drills. but I don't think that it was enough because I was worried about everything, and I don't. But
you were just a kid that came on the planet with some anxiety.
Yeah, but thankfully, Columbine did really, really affect me, but I was able to, I think my other just social anxieties and identity anxieties kind of trumped the fear of being shot in school. But that was just because
of the era.
Yeah. And I was in college before I knew it, and there weren't any, active shooter drills there. But I wonder, like, if I had been younger, if I'd been the same person with all the stuff that I came into this world with, and it had happened younger, and these were more of a regular thing, and the shootings themselves, not even the drills, but the shootings themselves were more of a regular thing, how that would have affected me even deeper. And it's one of those, like, I know that it would have. I know that I would have, as scared as I was to go to school because I didn't think anybody was going to like me, and I didn't think I was going to get good grades. Now it's going to be, I am not getting on that bus because I'm going to die.
Well, that almost seems quaint by comparison.
Exactly.
And I don't want to sound unsympathetic to your anxiety as a kid, but by comparison, it's just another whole world. Well, this film, Stephen, is moving and beautiful, terrible at the same time, and I'm really grateful. And my hope for it is that it has, and I'm going to put air quotes around this word, that it has great success. And by success, I mean that it changes hearts, it changes minds, and it can change. And it's part of your activism. I'm so grateful that you are using your art form of storytelling and of filmmaking to further this cause in a way that's meaningful and important.
Thank you.
I'm really, the performances, your performance certainly, and of your co-stars and of the children are so moving and so beautiful, horrible.
Yeah.
in the same way. So I want to thank you so much for this. And I'm inspired by your continuing to overcome those doubts like creatives must to get their work done. And so grateful to you for this time on the Morning Glory Project.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a joy. And yeah, that is what we hope, that it gets people involved. And it also, even if it's other storytellers, if it's people saying, I would like to address this in this way, I could get involved in these organizations. But also, you know what? Why don't I write something? Why don't I do a play, do a movie, do something like that? Because ultimately what we'd love is if this could go around and be seen by as many people as possible, not because we're not going to make money. We didn't make it to make money. Nobody makes short films to make money. Nobody makes short films to get famous. It's a lot. If you just really, really have something you need to say, and that's what this is.
This had to be a project of the heart because it was not going to be profitable.
Exactly.
I only have one small correction. It's not even a correction, maybe. It's called American Morning, and I think it could have easily been titled American Morning, but morning spelled M-O-U-R.
Oh yeah,
N-I-N-G.
That's intentional.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful film and an important message, and I thank you for bringing your art to this work.
Thank you very much for having me, Betsy. Appreciate that.
Of course, it's just an interesting story to talk to an actor and about how a film gets made and what goes into that. But I want to step back and look at it in a broader way. Stephen's an actor and a writer, and what he did is he used his skills and his art form to further a cause that he was moved to participate in. Now, not all of us are actors. Not all of us have access to the budgets and the inclinations of those creating that particular art. But we all have something. We all have perhaps a talent or a skill, a resource, an idea. We can contribute to causes that we believe in whatever way we can. For some, it's writing a check. And I know that's an antiquated term. I guess you'd Venmo the money now. But for some, they don't have time, but they've got financial resources, so they can contribute financially. For some, They can write or write music or produce events. For some who are accountants, they can help balance the books or raise the funds. For some, they can simply provide words of encouragement, or they can make the cookies and the casseroles, or bring the paper napkins and the silverware to the events that are supporting the causes that matter. You know, it's really easy these days to be frustrated and to think that nothing that we can do can make any difference. We're watching so much backward movement. But when you take the longer view of history, we've made progress. Look at what's happened with the civil rights movement, with the women's rights movement, with LGBTQ rights, with awareness about the environmental concerns, even though we're struggling in that area. The long reach of history shows us that progress has been made. And it was made in part because of very visible people out in front of each of those movements. Some of them celebrities, some of them ministers, some of them activists, politicians, whatever. But for each visible person, for each Stephen Dexter, there's a whole crew of people invisibly working behind them to help make the progress happen. So it's easy to give up and easy to get discouraged and feel like nothing matters. But when you look at the long view, the efforts make a difference. So I invite you to look at your abilities. Are you good at fundraising? Are you good at letter writing? Do you have some financial resources? Do you have a little bit of time? Can you watch somebody's kids while they go out and do the march that perhaps you can't do? We all have something to contribute to make this world just a little better. That's my extra boom for today. Thanks so much for your time and your attention today. And I hope that wherever you are, that you are finding your way to bloom.